Hi there, welcome to FIBA Motorsport and this video on the 2G DSM Drip Rail moulding, which is a product I've been working on for quite some time now, and it's finally ready to be released. So in this video I will be walking you through the processes of prepping your drip rails for the complete refurb, step by step, and what to do along the way. It's not a hard process, it is a bit time consuming, so the only thing you'll worry about is the time on it. So averagely you'll be looking at around 2 hours, about 2 hours for each drip rail from start to finish, not including the final trimming once it's all dry. That gives a general idea of the time frames you're looking at. It won't include the time if you need to replace or redo the inner water drain system. So that's just an extra bit of time that you need to prep for, because that's a bit more sanding and then a bit more paint on that. And then that has to obviously dry before you can start the actual process. So what I'll do now, I'll walk through the parts that you'll get as part of the kit. Then I'll walk you through the next parts where it's a fitting kit. So if you do need all the supplied fitting kit, you can purchase that additionally to the normal kit. However, most of it, some of it you might already have, so you may not need it. It's just in case someone wants the complete package, it's there for you to have it as one box coming to you versus trying to pick it up from your garage. So what I'll do now, I'll go through everything for you and just list everything out. So what you'll get in the general kit is you'll get your replacement drip rail moulding. You'll get 2 lengths of this, which will be oversized, so you can then trim them down afterwards once it's all dry. At the moment I'm just showing you a trimmed down version of the kit, just for demonstration purposes. Then on top of the drip rail, you'll notice that foam that is always compressed and is brittle, broken. That's even if it's there anymore, it could have deteriorated completely. So you'll get some new foam, which is one-sided for adhesive, and this is just to complement the whole drip rail refurbishment, because if you're doing the job, you might as well do the whole complete job. It's to a high finish then, and you'll never have to worry about it for many years after that. So not about to cut corners and not give the foam or have you find it, because there's no point. Put it in the kit, it's all done. The other part, which is the most important part in a sense as well, is the adhesive. I've been through quite a few adhesives in different formats, custom adhesives, rubber type super glues, and various different versions as well, from hand squeegeeing to gun application. They've all been through their different types of testing, but I'll actually do a proper video on all the adhesives, just to walk through a bunch of the different reasons of why I didn't choose it, what I did like about it and what not. But this one basically ticked everything. It also made install a lot easier than most, because it's relatively thick in texture, so it gripped it while laying the new trim work. But I'll get to that when I actually do the video for you of the drip rail. But this covered all of the temperature ranges, so it went quite high, so places like Texas where it will get quite hot, and obviously other places as well. But it was also cold tested to about -30 degrees, so trying to cover all bases of heat. So places in Canada, I don't know if there's other places that are super cold, but I've got to make sure that I've got one end of the scale and the other end of the scale pretty much covered. So anywhere in between, we're all good. So yeah, this works really well. The good thing is it lasts for quite a while. So generally they give you a year on it, depending on when the stock was made. So and you get quite a lot in there as well. So you'll do well. So if you need to quickly redo it, you've got plenty of spares to pull it off. If you don't find it's quite to your liking. Right, now that bit's done. This section here is what will be part of the additional package should you choose to opt for it, which you'll get various different parts. So you'll get some emery cloth, which is a 80 grit, and this is to prep various different little things, mostly to prep the new rubber trim. So you'll get a nice length for that, so you'll have plenty to go with. You'll also get some blue tape because you may need to do some extra work, and also when you're holding the edges down, especially this end with the angle, you want to make sure that that's nice and firm because it comes off at an angle and a twist, so you want to make sure that's held into place. So that's there as well for you. You'll also get some applicator brushes. These are just basic, fine bristled. You can use them for various jobs. I use them just to smooth out the application of the adhesive, and then they're pretty much disposable after that. There's not much you really need them for afterwards. And you'll have a roller. This will be, so when you've done the final laying, then you'll roll it all out and give it a nice smooth finish, because otherwise if you don't and you're trying to press it, you could do it by your palm. It's not quite going to be as accurate as a nice roller. The roller will give you a nice even bead. It will spread any excess out around the back, and then it will give you a really nice smooth finish, and on the corners as well, because after all you want to make sure that it's nice and smooth, so as it's sitting up against your bodywork, it's a nice smooth even one. You haven't got any wiggles or weaves in it. And that's the other reason why this adhesive was really good, because some other glues weren't quite strong enough, so you would have to, it would shift a little bit and then it would take time to go off, so you would have some wiggles in it. So to avoid that, this adhesive did very, very well. So items that you're going to need, some of them are optional. I would suggest probably all of them, to be honest. Right, main thing, you're going to need a wire wheel. Brand new, uncontaminated is always best. You can buy the dome version or you can buy the flat wheel version. Both will work. I've tested both. There's no problems with either of them. Personally, the slight advantage is getting into the back of the rail. I prefer the flat because I can push in a little bit more without causing any problems. But as I said, both do work. I haven't had any problems with both of them. I just prefer that one a bit more than that one. So that's up to you. I would have supplied these, but we have an M14 metric thread, and most of these will be imperial grinders, which we don't really get over here. The next thing you're going to need is 70% isopropyl alcohol. That is going to be your wiping for a lot of stuff. Prep work is always key. You want to make sure that everything is clean as possible in every single step of the way, especially before you do the final fit up. Then you're going to need a clean cloth. It can be, this is just a pillowcase, it's not going to have any fibers that are going to come off, so it's really nice to use stuff like that. Just nothing that will have small fibers that will come off and go anywhere, because they're a bit of a pain. Microfibers are okay, I think, as long as they're not like the bubbly type. You're of course going to need some safety glasses. This is a must. Wire wheels are not funny. If one of those metal things comes off, it will hurt you, gets in your eye. That's a huge problem. Even if it sticks in your top or gets in your hands, it's a problem. Please use safety goggles. This is no joke. You're going to need a applicator gun, various styles of this. Ideally, you don't need anything electric or power assisted, just a normal hand pump, because you don't get to, you need a lot, and it's not going to hurt your hand by doing that. Gloves, if you like to wear gloves, sometimes it can get a bit messy, especially with all the old stuff that you're trying to get off is going to get everywhere, so you might want to keep your hands clean. You can use latex gloves, that's up to you. When I'm using angle grinders, I like to use some earplugs. The high-pitched noise can get to me. You know, you don't want to have tinnitus and any other issues along with that. This is optional only, which is a stone chip paint, which is only required, and I'll show you on this old one. If your drip rail on the actual inner rail where the water passageway is, if I can get a good point of view, and I might need a torch for this. Let me grab my torch. Inside here, sometimes they go really dry from age and they start to lift. Some might have already gone. This one started to lift up, and you're starting to get dirt underneath that. That's going to be a problem, because eventually this will actually peel off completely and not give you any protection. So what you'll end up wanting to do is, before you do the main outer trim, you'll want to prep and do the inside, which is also what the tape will be for. And your stone chip, your black chipping will come in handy for, because that's what you'll paint on the inside. I did that to this one here, which is a finished version. Let's just set that up gently here. So in here is a whole completely new finish, sanded, cleaned, painted, and just to show you, there's that foam on top just to complement it even more, versus the old stuff, which would be soft, brittle, non-existent. Look at the difference on that one there. One squashed right to the floor. So that will make it last a lot longer, and you won't have to worry about that again, and it just finishes the whole product off. But I can walk you through that as well when I go to do the prep work, because that's got to be done before you actually do the outer section. And obviously this is one that's seen better days. This is generally what they can come out like. They just go old, they dry up, all the bits can crack, and it just flakes. It's not very nice, and obviously they're only very, very thin coating, and if it's dried up too much, you get chips along the top, and there's just no structure anymore, which isn't very nice at all. Right, so what you'll do when you've got your drip rail off, or you've got second-hand ones that you're going to refurb before you put them onto your vehicle, you'll always want to clean it. You can clean it with soapy water, isopropyl alcohol, nothing that's going to leave any greasy residue, because you're just only going to have to clean it off anyway. You'll want to wash every single placement, from the top mounting surface to the inner water rail itself, also the front side, and then also the back. Just get everything as clean as you can. You don't have to scrub everything, just give it a nice wash down. You're just trying to get any loose debris off, and anything else that will just become a problem later on, or it might fall off, which isn't going to help you in that instance. When you've done that, you'll then assess the situation. As I said about the inner rail, this is what you'll assess first, because you'll need to know if you've got to do that step. So when you're looking down the actual channel, and by the way, this could flick off at you because it's going to be brittle, so probably wear your goggles right about now. If it's remotely flaking, or you've got some channel where it's decided to pull up like this, see how that's coming up? Well, that's now no good, and in your channel you've now not got any protection, so eventually that will start to want to corrode over long periods of time, because you've got no barrier between the base metal and the safety layer. So on this one, you would scrape all of this out, and you can hear it, it's really brittle. That means it's definitely had it. And there's a long strip here that just pulls right out. So that's what you're going to get out. You'll get that out all the way along the channel, from one side to the other. And that's why the emery cloth is supplied in such a length, because you'll then take some emery cloth once it's all cleaned out, and again, once you've got all of the excess out, you'll wash it and wipe it, clean up any residue that might have soaked behind it, and then you'll just go down the back there with your emery cloth, and you'll just give it a nice sand, because you're just prepping for that section there all the way along. When you do that, if you do this bit, you can go ahead, you'll need a razor blade for this, which I seem to have misplaced around here somewhere. Let me get a new one. The old foam on top sits on a piece of that weatherproofing trim that's in the channel. So now you can do this stage, because you're going to be painting it on top of that as well. So if you pull the rubber off, you'll be left with a piece of the black rubber trim, which don't know if we call it a trim, let's call it an under seal, which is what goes down into the channel and then back up again. So that's part of the same structure, all inside that channel there. So you'll end up taking that all off. You can sand that off with the wire wheel, but just bear in mind the thickness of it, because what you'll end up doing, and it's the reason why you get some blue tape, you'll mask up what isn't coated. That way when you've done your painting, then you'll end up with a nice strip, and you'll get to have the exact same finish as the original would be with this nice shiny surface. And then that will be as good as an OEM finish as you can possibly get, and it will look as OEM as it will be. Once you've cleaned all of that out and you've prepped here and then you've sanded it all and you're going to get ready for painting, just to make sure you have scratched and scored all of the inner surface and the top surface. You want to make sure it's got something to grab hold of nicely. You can grab your blue tape and this is just going to be a rough demonstration. So where your black line was, originally we weren't going to have that anymore once it's gone, because you don't want to blue tape it while you're getting that off, because you'll ruin the blue tape. So you've got a good 4 millimeters between the cutout and where the under layer goes. So then you'll just go around and your blue tape what would be fairly close to the OEM section, and that is all you'll do there. On the back side like this, you'll just put a bit of tape on here and a bit of tape on the corner here, and in that way it will stop any excess going into or onto the back surface. So it will look something like that, and it will just stop any excess going onto the back side like so. You'll grab some more blue tape, and this is the part that isn't included in the average of 2 hours, because this is the additional extra which you may find needs to get done. So this is more time on top, because you've got to prep it, then you've got to do this prep, then you sand it, and then you've got to paint, and then you'll leave it for about 24 hours before you can actually do any other prep work. But this has to be the first bit you do, because if you do this after, you could risk ruining the new trim on the front, because you have to sand inside of here anyway. So this has to be done first as your first prep work. On the inside, you've got a little lip here where it's rolled over on itself. All you'll do is you'll run your blue tape. Well, there's two ways you could do that actually. You could either line it up precisely on it, or you can just go over it a little bit. So it will go over the lip section. You can then just put your nail along the inside just to give it a little bit of a score. Then you'll fold it over on the front side like so, and that will just protect any paint from getting onto the front surface. And then on the inside, all you do is you'll find with your little knife or blade the edge which I showed you, and then you'll just trim along that, and then it will give you a nice sharp finish. Your excess will come off, and then you're left with a really nice exact covering. So when you paint inside there, it goes right up to the corners, so it's not a problem with any of that. So pretty much when you've got to this stage, that's what it will look like across the whole of the drip rail itself, and then you're good to go. One final little wipe down, and then you'll do your painting, leave it to dry, and then once it's dry, then you can peel all of these off and then you'll be left with a really nice sharp finish inside and out. And this blue stuff's really nice because it comes off nice and easy. You can leave it on for a little while and it's not going to become a problem like normal masking tape is. So blue tape's always good. I tend to use a lot of the 3M, but it's just mega expensive. But it is generally the best stuff when you're using blue tape. I've used this before. It's really good. It's not as expensive as the 3M, and it still does a great job. So you have now got, if you need to do this stage, you have now got one of the steps out of the way. You'll then move on to the next step, which is preparing the outer surface for cleaning. You've got a couple of ways you can do this. Now I'm going to put this one away. It's just a quick demonstration for the inside, because this one here is a sample one I've been working on. It's now completely scrapped because it's been used so many times for different reasons, and the weather trim was actually really nice. So your drip rail may be in different stages of its life. This is generally considered a normal drip rail. The edges on the top might be a bit dry, they might have small cracks, and they'll generally be a little bit hard. The bottom side tends to be slightly softer because it doesn't see as much of the direct sunlight as the top side does. And this one hasn't worn and it's still quite shiny, which few of them are like that. My original ones are still like that. Mine are just in slightly better condition than this. They haven't got any shiny coming through, but it's got slight surface roughness to it, just like this has. But if you look really close, you get all the micro cracks, which is part of the problem. And as soon as stuff gets underneath there, it all starts to crack up even more. And as I said, this is very thin, this main body, so it doesn't give you much chance for it to actually wear it down before it shines through, which is a big problem. So once you've prepped all of the other bits, you can either use your razor blade and all of the excess, which is normally above and below. So if you look here, you've got excess which overhangs the top folded section, and on the bottom section here, they're the flexible parts. So you can either trim them with the blade, I'm doing it backwards so it's not going to work very well. Do a little bit more in there. So if you trim it off, you'll be trimming off the excess on the top, and as you can see, the difference in the thickness here you've got really nice thin section at the front, and then you've got the excess where it would be. That's one way to start it. There is another way, and I'll show you that. I'll get my other earplug in. You'll get your wire wheel, and before I do the wire wheel, I'll talk you through the process of how to use the wire wheel on the drip rail. In general, even in sanding, you always want to wire wheel or sand towards the outer of the surface, never from the outside in, because if you catch it and snag it, it will twist it, flex it, potentially bend it, because this is only thin. I mean, look how it's thin. So you could potentially, I'll show you actually, I snagged it on this side ages ago, and it snagged it right from my hands and it bent the piece. So that's what you want to try and avoid, any of that snagging. No rushing. You don't need to rush. You've got all the time to do this. So with your sander, take a center line and you'll be going from the center out, never from the outside to the center. Don't do that. So you'll be going this way where the wheel is coming this way. If you did it that way and you came from the outside inwards and you snagged that, it's just going to take it away. So doing that with a wire wheel will be the best solution for you. And I'll show you how easy it is with the wire wheel and why I opted for the wire wheel. So once you've done that, and you don't need a lot of pressure, it's just very light, let it take its wires and it will just take it off for you. Once you've done the front surface, you'll then work on the back surface and inside the little gap. Because this is thin, you don't want to stick too much pressure on it. Remember, you're also generating a little bit of heat with the wire wheel, so just take it nice and easy, no over pressurizing it, because you don't need to do that at all. It will take itself off. So when you get to the stage where you'll want to work with the back, the same process. You don't want to take too much off because the back section is still only quite thin on there, so it doesn't come all the way up to the top side. So let's get a bit closer on that for you. So you see there's only a little bit of the existing rubber to come off, so you want to just take that off and not a lot more. So that center section on the channel is why I like the flat wheel a bit better, because you can get in a bit more. This one's been through the works, so it's not quite actually open anymore. It's actually a really damaged one that has been caught, twisted, you know, everything that has been thrown at it has pretty much been thrown at it. If you find that you have got a tighter rail, because some tend to be tighter than others, no idea why, you can use a screwdriver and you can place it in there and just give it a little bit of a twist, but you'll want to use a ball nose type where it's not as sharp, because you may end up putting little high spots on the back here. So you can get a flat end and you can just push it through and just push it all the way in and not knock anything off the table. But hopefully yours are all in good condition, because they haven't been messed around with as much as this has, so yours should be still pretty good, so you won't have to worry about that. Let me go get my adhesive I knocked on the floor. Let's put that there. So the finish you're looking for with the wire wheel, it kind of gives it a, let's call it an etched type finish, and this is good because the adhesive will stick to this really nicely, and it also gives it a nice cut, just to take off any surface if there's any corrosion on it, if you've leaked through, anything that's been on there, we'll just prep it for you ready for your adhesive and your new drip rail molding. So you're pretty much set. You'll go through, make sure that you've got all of the edges nice and clean. Same on the inside. You want to make sure that you've got all of the inside channel nice and clean. You may need to just do a little bit of a knife extractor, just a general cleanup. If you find that you haven't got just the tiniest little spot, grab a bit of the emery cloth, and just put it through there and just sand just a little bit on the outer lip. And then once that's done, you'll clean it all off, because the next step is going to be putting the drip rail on. These bits that are cleaned on the corners are vital, because the drip rail molding actually goes over them, so it's as original as you're going to get. Actually, I missed a step. There'll be a step before you put the drip rail molding on that. So you'll see the channel, one side sharper than the other. You'll have a flat, and then you'll have a hook. If you look at the actual rail itself, you'll notice that you've got the hook, and then you've got the flat, which will be on the back side. So it's been designed in such a way so it physically looks, locks in, and acts as OEM as it can be, right down to the same length. Actually, I'll show you on the other one that's been done. That will be the easier way to do this. So it will latch over and lock on as OEM was, and still give you the same amount sitting over as you would have. So that's the way that's been designed, but the step I forgot to go through is the prep work for the actual molding replacement. Your emery cloth and drip rail will now go through a process, because as this comes off, it's got a shiny surface to it, and that's just part of the release agent. And I've done part of this so you can see, but that side's quite dull. So if I show you side by side, we'll have one dull side and one shiny side. This is the side that's been prepped, and this is the side that has not. All of it needs to look like this. And to do that, what you do is get a tiny bit of emery cloth, fold it on itself, and just put a tiniest little flat on it, like so. And then this is going to be a little bit tricky to show you over from that distance, so let me just move it a bit closer. Right, so let's flip this around. So this is the side that is still shiny. As you can see, it hasn't been prepped yet. So when you've got it nice and flat like so, you could make a little square block if you wanted to. I don't think it's needed. I haven't ever used that and it's not been a problem. So what you'll do is you'll hold the first section. I know it's blocking you, but I'll try and do it without it. And you'll just put it along over itself a few times, pushing it flat gets it right into the corners on both sides, because you want every little bit of this, including the bits that stick over the edges, to be prepped and non-shiny. And when you do this, you'll obviously be pulling up a bit of rubber, which you'll end up cleaning off later anyway, so that's not a problem, because this also preps it for allowing the adhesive to stick much better without the release agent on it. It's not great doing it forwards. It always is much better pulling it. No idea why, but it just seems to bounce well. So when you get to the end, all you'll do is just flip it around and you'll just do it off the end of the molding, and then you can continue that direction if you so wish. If it wears out in one little bit, just move it along, put a little flat on it, and again start the process until you've got all of the shiny bits off. It's only light pressure, you don't need to put a lot of muscle into it. You're just taking the top surface and basically, in a word, scoring it. Give that a little knock and get the extra rubber off, and then you'll end up checking the whole surface area and seeing what's shiny and what isn't, and you'll tell what's shiny and what isn't, and you'll check every section like that. So you'll be like, I still need to do that bit, and that part's not done. So you'll go back and do that bit, and then you'll recheck it again to make sure the whole surface is nice and dull. Then you'll just check to make sure that you've got enough underneath here as well, and in here. And that bit's easy as well, because once you've got the emery cloth like so, you can lean it into it and you can just go up against it and put a little bit of pressure up on the sides. So if I do that again, so if you just put a bit of pressure on the sides and push it, that will then get to the underside. You don't want to do too much on that because you don't want to tear it. I haven't torn any, but if you put a lot of muscle into it, you'll tear pretty much anything. It's the same with the bit that's got the bigger curve. You don't need to push too much into that one. The trick for here is just to have it a bit tighter without having a flat, and you'll just put it in at an angle, lift up a little bit, and then you just put it along like so, with your finger at the base, just trying to push in on the top side like so, and then that will get you enough, and then you can check it out, pull it down and just check to make sure you've got all that. So you can see why prep takes a lot of time, because there's various little bits you've got to do checking, and you want to make sure you get it right, because if you don't, the adhesive's not going to stick very well, and then you've wasted a lot of time doing all the other stuff. So if you don't rush and you just take your time on the prep work, it will all be okay. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you the process of getting this onto the drip rail metalwork now. So while I was getting this prepped, I've got, remember when I said about the metal wires? And that was in my jumper, and there's probably many more, and they can just fly off at you because of the speed, and that can go in your eye. So that's why safety goggles are quite important. You don't want that little bugger getting at you. I'm sure I'll find some more somewhere in my jumper. They always get about. So with the brush, now you've got your drip rail molding sanded or prepped, you'll likely go over it and you'll just brush off the excess rubber that has still left on the surface, and then you can give that a nice hit as well, and you just give it a rub down with your cloth. One step I should have said before this is, once you've done all the sanding, it's actually a wise idea to re-prep your surface again, to give your surface a nice clean down, because you're going to have various bits of sanding dust, wire wheel dust from the plastic rubber coating from the factory, and it will just be nice to keep everything clean before you do the final install. So where did my brush go? Put it down and now disappeared. So with your isopropyl alcohol, didn't say it then for a second, no, I have not been drinking this stuff. It might sound like I have, but I haven't. You just give it a quick squirt, and you'll just give it a little bit of a brush, and this is just to clean off any excess which could be left behind. You also could use an air gun if you've got a compressor. I haven't got it on, so both ways will work. That will give you an extra bit of help. See, told you I haven't been drinking it, but I can't get my words out right. And then you'll just go over it again with your cloth to make sure you're just pulling as much of it off as possible, getting into the corners of the lips at the back. You've got to make sure that you're getting into those okay. Sorry, I'm off camera doing this because I've got to hold it up while I do it. And then you're just helping it along with the drying process as well when you're wiping it, because it will eventually evaporate. It won't take long to do that. Could just give it a little knock as well and get any excess off. Then you'll do one final spot check to make sure all of your surface is nice and prepped and ready and you haven't got any shiny bits. And then you'll be ready for your adhesion as the next step. So your drip rail metalwork or framework, you'll prep that as well by spraying your isopropyl. Honestly, I have not been drinking that stuff. Alcohol spray. I'm just going to say alcohol spray because clearly I can't pronounce isopropyl. So you'll clean this up, wipe it, and just get all the excess dirt off, because there will be some. You can do this 2-3 times until you're 100% happy with it. You want to make sure that it's an all clean surface, because this is where the critical part is for the adhesion between the two surfaces. So as I said, I'm only doing a little section to show you, but it still applies for the same amount. So you'll still prep the whole lot, and you'll lay the whole lot in one. So when you come to do this, it's very fine tipped. You don't need to cut it or make it any bigger. There's no need to do any of that. You can just go around and do a up, down. You can do lines, however you feel you want to do it. I've done both ways and they all come out the same, because you're going to be brushing it anyway. There's no problem with any of the artwork you decide to draw on it while you're doing this. So that bit's done. Make sure you catch all the excess dripping out the top. You'll want to put a little bit extra on the edges, because you need to make sure that that adheres to it. If for any reason once it's dried you've got a little bit that's peeled up, just bung a little bit more in and that will seal it nicely. The other way to do it is, once it's dried and you've trimmed it and you find the tiniest little hole, you can just put a little bit of you can get black rubberized super glue, and you can just pour it in there a little bit. Okay, not pour it, you can just put a little bit in there just to seal the gap up, so that will hold it, and it will also help it from peeling up on the top as well. You can do that on the back side just to give it a little bit of extra strength there. But if you've got enough of this that comes through when you've rolled it, and that's what the roller's for, then you won't have any problems with that. So with one of your brushes, let's get a clean one, not a wet one. So this is a nice dry one. All you'll do is you'll just brush it. It doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as you get a surface which is covering all of the metal work. You actually don't need a whole lot of the adhesive on here, because it squishes and fills out quite nicely. But obviously you want to make sure that there's enough for it to fully squish out and leave a nice even layer underneath, because the last thing you want to do is have a wave in the top where you've got a thick section and a thin section, and you can slightly squidge it and roll it over, but it's not, you're not going to be able to get that far by doing that. So by having a nice even as you can coating, that helps you in the long run. Picked picked up a bit of dirt there, not dirt, dried up. Must have been in the tip of the nozzle there. So now you've covered up all of your metal work, you can just smooth it over a little bit, make sure that it's pretty even and you haven't got any huge lumps anywhere. And then this is where the other critical part is. You still need some glue over the top. So you want to make sure that you have some adhesive which you can put in over the back. Because it still needs to adhere back here as well. If you find that you haven't put enough on, you can just either scrape some excess off and just roll it on it, or you can squirt a tiny little bit of bead on the top and just roll it in. When you roll it, it will come out anyway, but you don't want to take the chance that you might not have enough in there, and you want it to grip straight away on it, not hope that you rolled it and then there's some that goes down there, when you know that if you've put it there, it's automatically there and any excess is a plus there. Because whatever comes out afterwards, once it's all dry, you'll trim that off and you'll smooth it once it's still, because you can't get your finger in this section very easily. But on the bottom section, for instance, where you've got all of that layer space, once you've got the trim on there, you can smooth it with your finger just like you'd do with silicone anyway. So it's the same process on the back side. If you haven't got any that's gone over, you're just, can't do it that way around. You'll just use the edge of the brush and just borrow a little bit more from the face, so then you'll get a bit sticking over the side like that. And you'll do that all the way along. And this is why it takes a bit of time to do. And this is part of the lengthy prep work, but you'll thank yourself later when it comes out really nice, and you'll be happy that you took the extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes to not skip any shortcuts. But doing the job as a whole isn't hard. It's just time consuming. So there we go. We got a nice coating over the front, over the back side, and then that way when we put our rail moulding on, it will be nice and ready for the excess to spill over. So remember the direction that you're picking this up from. The looped side will always be the top side where it's got the hook on it. So you've got to make sure that you place that in the right position. Otherwise, if you don't catch it and it dries, you've now put it upside down. So I'm going to trim this down a little bit because I don't need that much for this demonstration piece. So just making sure one last time everything's clean, it's all dry
you haven't got no isopropyl alcohol, I managed to say it that time, that's still not wet, because that would be not very helpful towards you doing this fit up. So a few ways you can do this. Normally I'm starting from the left side and I work the way back. So what I do is, as I go from the left, I'll check the ends and I'll put them on and I'll make sure it loops over. You can also, if you've got a friend, you can get a second pair of hands. You don't have to, because I have done it this way once and it's actually fine. You'll just place the middle section on there first, and then you'll hold it, and then you'll just lightly put it over the top and then shimmy it down. So that's pretty much what I'll show you here. So with a little bit of excess hanging over, so you don't want to do like for like, you want to leave about 1 inch or so on the end. You'll just place it on top of the adhesive and just lightly go over with your hand so you've got a fixture point. You'll then go look at the sides and make sure that you've got everything latched over and hooked. So then you'll just go along and press it so it overhooks the metal work. So then you'll get a nice smooth finish like that. And then you'll go back and make sure that the bottom hasn't pulled up too much, but we haven't rolled it yet, so you're going to get some top and bottom fighting where it's still got a bit much on the main body. But as long as you've got the rough idea of where you're going, then you're all good. So already it looks a ton better. You can obviously see a raise in the center where you've got your excess, and this is where the roller comes in handy. So you'll place it on a nice solid surface and you'll just hold it, and again, you don't need a lot of pressure on this. You're literally just helping it along. You can hold it from the actual flat section in different stages. So as you roll it, you're kind of rolling it around on itself, so you're trying to spread everything out evenly from left to right and from front to back. And you'll go over this a few times before you finish off with your end roll. So what you're looking for, I'll show you in a second when I get this next bit done, is you're looking for a nice consistent flow top to bottom and then left to right. So I'll show you this bit here. So this section here is the nice smooth part now, and if you put your finger along it, you'll feel a little bump where you've stopped, and that, I don't know if the camera will pick it up. Oh, just about. Yeah, about there. So where you stopped from rolling, you've not spread anything out anymore. So this is now a nice evenly coating. If you put your finger on it, you'll still get a squidge on it, but that's because it hasn't set yet anyway. You're not trying to squeeze all of it out. You're trying to get a nice even smooth coating so it will grip on both surfaces, because if you push too much out, you won't have a lot of adhesive to do the adhesion, funny enough, to both coatings or surfaces. So I'm just gonna get rolling here, so I won't speak too much while doing this. You're just looking for your consistent finish. Turn it around. I'm going to go this side so I can get to this bit. Good light will help here because you'll see all the surface changes. If you're doing it in a dark shed, dark garage, you're going to struggle to see the different levels as easy. So one thing you can do is when you're checking it, you can put your eye across the surface and you can just check to make sure that you've got no ripples in it, any lines in it, and if you see any, you can just go and work on that little section. Because you're not trying to get any high spots in the middle or anything to make it curve more. You want a nice even surface. You could do that. It's not as effective and it's quite small surface area. Whereas if you work it forward and backwards on the long strokes, you're going to get a better coverage versus doing the short strokes. I never found that way to be quite particularly amazing. This way is always the way I've done it. So that's the way I'm just going to show you it. I've done a few of these, so it's I've got a general good idea of the ideal ways to do it. So hopefully you guys are okay with the way I'm doing it. So that's a nice even finish, apart from this top section because it's the excess for the bit that I didn't do. So I'm happy with all of that. Then what I'll do, before I know it's done, I'll just look along the side here, all the way along. So I'll do this and I'll check, let me get my head in. I'll check eye level to make sure that this is all exactly the same looking, and I'll just twist the roller a little bit just to push the excess, the little lip that sticks out of the drip rail trim, and then that way I can get a nice even complete line across that. And then I'll do the same with the bottom side. I'll look down it, I'll see what needs to be adjusted, and I'll just roll the excess to make it nice and smooth until I get a nice even smooth line across that. So this is where the adhesive is very good because it holds it in situ while you're doing it. It's got a really good property with being nice and thick, allowing you to do this without it trying to pull itself off. Some of the adhesives that I used, they were on the thinner side, but even some of the thick ones, they didn't have the initial tack to hold anything in place. So as you're rolling, it will try and pull off or move away and seep. So basically you would have to go over it again just to make sure it holds itself. So it's got a little bit of time so it can tack up, because obviously every atmosphere is going to be different, every temperature placement is going to be different, so it'll all vary. So this is why it helps, because it makes actually doing the job so much easier, and you won't have to worry about it. And because it goes off on a slow cure, you've got a bit of movement in time frame anyway. So the last bit on this section here, remember I said about the blue tape on the front side, mostly on the front side where the angle is. It's a bit of a tricky one. Not tricky, but tricky, because it's on the last part and you've got nothing after it and it's on an angle. If it was straight cut, it wouldn't be so bad, but because it's on an angle, the rubber, basically it's still trying to say, hey, I'm on a curve. So the rubber doesn't know that, and you can't make the rubber curve like that. So what you've got to do is you've got to physically bend it round, making sure that you're still lipped over here. And then when you've done that, you'll grab some blue tape, and you'll put it over the front. Ugh, just got it on my fingers. Don't touch there. You'll get it over the face of it gently. You don't want to put too much pressure on it because you'll start folding it over. And then you'll attach it to the shiny section. And then you'll do the same with the front, just enough so it will hold this in location where it needs to, up against itself. And then that way it keeps it on that curvature, which is what it needs. Otherwise it's still trying to say the rubber wants to go straight, but the metalwork is going the other way. So that's the only part that you need to just make sure is right. And it's probably the most trickiest part, which is actually not tricky at all. You just got to make sure you see that, and keep that in the same position as it needs to. So once you've done that, you're pretty much there. You'll go over and you'll just do a final check, and I'll tell you a little trick to look out for. So if you've gone along here and you have noticed that at the bottom, now this might be tricky to see or pick up on, if you've got a faint line along the bottom, that means that the base has been pulled up too much. So what you'll do is you'll get your roller, and we're going to show you this nicely or easily. You'll get the roller and you'll put a bit more angle on it, and you'll just roll it over the end, because what it means essentially is you've rolled too much of the top side over on itself. So it's pulled the bottom side, instead of it sitting up into the corner like a V, you've pulled it up too much, so it's done that. So you've got the material coming down and then folding up, not folding up on itself, but you've got a slight crease kink in it. So you rolling that out down to the bottom more means that it now makes the bottom straight, and then it, as the material goes over top, it's a nice smoother arc instead of a kink and then going around. So then you'll end up with a nicer, smoother finish with no faint line. As long as it's not drastic, you'll be absolutely fine with it. When you get it too drastic, you'll see it a lot, but that's just a fine detail where, if you know, you can check out for, and you've still got time to move it around while it's still settling. And then when you've done that, again, you'll do a final check. You'll check down your lines to make sure everything is even. You'll just do a slight touch up where you need to, if you need to, and you'll get a really nice clean line. And then you're ready to just let it set. Different environments will take longer, be shorter. I generally like to leave it for at least 2 days, so 48 hours, and then you're pretty good to go from then. Any of the excess that has come out of the bottom, if you lightly do this, you can just smooth it. This will help seal it, and it will just give you an extra bit of bonding. You don't see this anyway, so it doesn't matter if you don't do that. You could always trim it off. It's completely up to you. There's no problem with either or the other. And then when it's dry, any of the excess in the top that comes out, you can just put your knife down there and you can just trim that back. Only the excess of the adhesive, not the actual rubber, so be careful when you do that. I'll show you on the good one. So on here, let me just, no, I can't, let me grab that torch again. So all you'll do is you'll just trim the excess adhesive that's come out, and then you're all good on that one. You don't even see this either, but if you just want to make it look a little bit neater, then you can do. And then that's pretty much it. And then when you have got to a final drying stage, you will get a sharp blade and you will cut this right along that metalwork, and on the angle piece you'll cut that on the same angle as the metal. And then on the front here you actually have plastic clips which will go in there, and it's to cap the whole triangle off, so as it sits on top of the metalwork it doesn't scratch it. So that's one bit that you'll put back in, and I should have mentioned that at the start, that you take that out. The rear has no cap, it's just an open. You can just make sure, as I said, that you've got all of your filler in there, and everything is glued up nice and tight. If not, a bit of black rubberized super glue will be fine. Just don't get it on the outer surface because you won't be able to get that off. And then once it's fully dry, so you'll just let this sit now. You want to let it sit as flat as possible. You don't want to sit twisted or anything like that because it won't be very good. When you put your finger on it, it can pull stuff. So you'll let that sit now in a nice safe area. No kids, you don't want any kids messing around, touching it, near it. So as long as it's out of the way, I wouldn't worry about putting in any airing cupboards or heating boxes. Just let it naturally cure for the period of time, and then you're all good. One thing that you can do is just check once you've left it, just put your finger on it just to make sure it's gone nice and stiff. It's not still too soft. I've done it in a day and it's been absolutely fine. So 2 days is always just an extra precaution to make sure it is completely fully dry. And then the last stage, which is the finishing touch, is once you've got, if you've done the prep work for the back, you will get your foam on the back side ready for mounting. It's really simple. One sided is the foam, the other side is the adhesive. You peel the adhesive back, you get it on to the outer side of the black part that's on the top side. So let's go back to this one. So this is the original black section. So you would put the this is where I need 3 hands. Let's use my arm and hold it in, lock it in. So you would place that over where the outer side of the black is, and then you peel it off and stick it all the way along like so, and then that will be the final refresh for your drip rail. And then you'll have a nice foam like so all the way along. And then that be ready for just a wipe, and then you can now bolt it back up to your vehicle, and it will last you a very, very, very long time now. Cleaning it is just general normal car wash soap. You don't need to use any special washes. As you're washing the car, just always make sure that you don't anything can always tear, so when you're washing, just pay extra attention, because I've caught this on my stock one and I've chipped the stock one in the corner. When my wash mitt goes over it, it just gets in between this little line between the rear quarter window and the drip rail, and I've just caught it and just pulled a little bit. So just to make sure that you don't catch that, because if you catch it, rubber can still tear, as well as some harder plastic like the OEM stuff can chip. So that's just a precaution. Make sure that you're careful if you do wash your car around here. Other than that, there's no worries about anything else. No harsh chemicals. It's still resilient to harsh chemicals, but you still don't want to use them because, well, one, the car's your baby, and two, harsh chemicals aren't really used for washing cars anyway. So you can use rubber trim restorer to, if you want it shinier, and just keep it nice and supple. The more you look after it, the more it will last anyway. Just don't use anything that will start drying rubber out. That obviously will diminish rubber a lot quicker. Any normal car products will be absolutely fine for long periods of time. The foam, which I didn't mention, you'll just go over the bottom a little bit. This is how the original was, so you'll notice that, and that's exactly what you'll do. Right, thank you very much for watching. I hope this video will help you out in the process of doing the DIY drip rail molding kit from FIBA Motorsport, and it's guided you in a way that will help you to do this nice and easy and to get you the same results, because once you've done this you can pat yourself on the back and you can be like, job well done, and look at your drip rails again with a really nice finish, nice and smooth, and be like, yeah, they look good. And some nice foam, because we don't see the foam, but we know it's there. If we know it's there, it's a good thing. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I can bring some more videos and installs and everything else on the products I do. Don't forget, as always, you got to like the video. You can subscribe if you wish to. Follow me on Facebook, and generally just thank you for the support on all the products, and this is one that I am very excited about because it's going to be such a huge product for the 2G DSM. It was a huge project, long development side, but I got there eventually. So thank you very much, and take care, and look forward to seeing all your lovely drip rails get back out into the action. Take care everyone, bye bye. So once your drip rail has finally dried, you'll be able to trim all the edges, and what you'll do is you'll grab your razor blade and you'll trim it along the metal frame, and in this way it will match exactly the same, and when you put your plastic cap on the end you'll have a nice finish and you won't have to worry about anything not fitting then. So once trimmed you'll have a finish that looks like this, which will match the frame, and when you turn it over you'll have a nice clean cut, and then cap goes on and you're all done. So coming back a day and a half later, this is how it is. All this section is now dried, so as you can see it's nice and stiff, so you haven't got any soft spots, which is good. And then what you'll do, as I said, let's get some light in here, all the excess that has spilled over you can just take your blade and just trim that off. You can leave it if you wish, it's not a problem, you barely see it, but if you wish to just trim it you can do. And the rear on the bottom, because you smoothed it out, it doesn't look like it's built up. So again, you don't see any of this, it's just hidden away, and that's it. And now you are ready to just give the surface a wipe over, because you'll no doubt pick up some dust, dirt, and then you can install your new drip rails and admire and appreciate all your hard work, and won't have to worry about this for a very long time now, which is very nice. And just look how smooth that is, much smoother. And then you get down to the side, so I've got a bit of dirt there because of the floor, has just got some metal on there. Nice and smooth and a nice line. So as you go up to the bodywork, it'll be really nice. So there we have it.
2G drip rails, refurbished.